Today we're here at the Osireion, and I'm standing in the northern entrance. I'm Lex Levy. Today, we're here in Abydos at the temple attributed to Seti I, father to King Ramses II. We'll first explore inside. We'll pass through the 7 gates, investigate the King's List, and the quote-unquote helicopter hieroglyphics. And after that is something extremely special. We are working with the ISIDA Project. We've been given this incredible honor, this opportunity to perform archaeological research for the Osireion VII Mission Project. We brought special gear and it's going to be so exciting. I can't wait. So, let's go. In part 2, we investigate the Osireion with special permission access. My husband, Geoffrey Drumm, is a member of the Mission Osireion VII Archaeological Project, and you can follow his exceptional research and his work on his channel at The Land of Chem. And for exclusive Osireion footage, join his members-only channel. Be sure to watch his episode 118, The Function of the Osireion, which is one of my favorites. And you can follow each stage of the Mission Osireion VII Project on the ISIDA Project's website. The link is in the video description below. If you want to help support our research and expeditions, grab some merch from the new Archaeo.alchemy store. Rock the classic logo in your favorite color combination with some beautiful alchemical prints. There are hats, mugs, hoodies, shorts, tanks, and tapestries. More designs are in the works, so stay tuned. And if you want to be the lifeblood of my channel, please become a member for early access, exclusive updates, and content. Thank you all so much. Now, back to our adventure. Let's explore the spectacular temple complex of Seti I. The Great Temple of Abydos, Temple of the Kings. It is where the deified kings of ancient Egypt were celebrated, and was a place of pilgrimage, worship, and initiation into the cult of Osiris. It is the largest surviving ancient temple in Abydos. Construction of the temple began by Seti I in the 19th dynasty, and the temple yard and first hypostyle hall were arranged by his son, Ramses II. It has an unusual L-shaped ground plan, constructed primarily of limestone and sandstone. It is debated if Seti I was unaware of the existing subterranean Osireion located here at the rear of the temple, and had to modify the floor plan into the L configuration, or if he knew about the Osireion and intentionally built the temple in this configuration, which is what I believe. And I also believe the functionality of the Osireion was incorporated within the temple. Here is a layout of the temple of Seti I that will help orientate you as we explore. We are now making our way up the first ramp staircase, and we will investigate the 2 wells.
See here on the left some more of this mud brick enclosure that surrounded these temple structures.
This is the cartouche of Seti here. والله قاعد تسمع العاد.
Here's one of the 2 wells. In the portico of the Temple of Seti I.
One was like a well, and the second one was a room. They get honey on it. Yes.
These two wells that flank either side of the entrance to the Temple of Seti I may represent the two pillars that we later see in alchemy and Freemasonry, the positive and the negative. The water source has been determined to be separate from that of the Osireion. I'm Lex Levy. Today, we're here at the Temple of Seti I, and afterwards, we will explore the Osireion.
Water source directly below the structure, which they excavated down in the bedrock and tap in directly to this subterranean source of water. Same thing like we saw on the Giza Plateau with the Osiris shaft. They were very meticulous about the excavation of the Osiris shaft down into the bedrock to where it would precisely tap into this subterranean pocket of water, which also doesn't fluctuate.
We are now approaching the third ramp staircase, which leads to the portico, where there are 12 sandstone columns. This forms the facade and the 7 gates, all of which, but the central, were closed by Ramses II, and leads to the first hypostyle hall, where there are 24 columns, and you will see sacred numbers used all throughout this temple.
As the appearance window, the king during specific festivals.
Unfortunately, they carved his face off, but that's it. The top, here, and the top.
One thing I'm certain of, the Temple of Seti still holds some secrets. As a matter of fact, lots of them. One day, a patient archaeologist may come to Abydos to investigate all its unknown and fascinating possibilities. Maybe he will stir the enthusiasm and admiration of the entire world. Maybe with something bigger and more important than Lord Carnarvon's discovery of Tutankhamun's mortuary treasures in 1922. Seti. This is a picture of Geoffrey standing where Seti once stood, at the portico of the Temple of Seti I. Dorothy Louise Eady, also known as Seti, was the keeper of Abydos, Temple of Seti I, and was a draftswoman for the Department of the Egyptian Antiquities. She is known for her belief that in a previous life she had been a priestess in ancient Egypt, as well as her considerable historical research at Abydos. Her story is fascinating, and I highly recommend you looking her up.
No, weird. Actually, the Dr. Geoffrey says that it is the most beautiful depictions because earlier time of Ramses II he did use the same workers of his father. So some of his art became amazing like this. Usually gives them the simple fact. So that's the main thing here. So usually this drama between Osiris and Set we will hear down at Edfu, but just to know Osiris is the per farvi vivere per sempre, eccola qui, chiarissima, davanti a Dio, Rambolati e Osiride dietro qua. Quindi il livello più alto che è Amurati, il livello più alto, ma però qui in questo tempio Osiride, che il tempio è dedicato tutto a Osiride, quindi se guardiamo bene qui, c'è stata solo una più alta dal suo bene? Qui tutti sono offerte, la corona bianca, la corona rossa, ISIDA sta dando qui il simbolo della vita e sta facendo anche con le mani qua sulla spalla, quindi qua fuori che in diverse divinità, soprattutto in that's why we had almost Osiris, Rambo e Amunra, ok? Così tutti sono offerte con diverse divinità. Andiamo dentro. and his wife, Isis. I know him from the throne above the head. And then Ramses II in front, he says that he had a dream. His father came to him and telling him that you must continue what I did at Abydos. That's why he will continue the building of his father. And even the son of Ramses II made the death to continue the building of things before we go ahead as well. This is the end of the new era. So I'm actually come back later.
We are about to pass through the first series of 7 gates. And we see the symbolism of 7 gates repeated throughout the structures in ancient Egypt. The ancient Egyptians believed that in the netherworld, the Duat, there were various gates, doors, and pylons, crossed every night by the solar boat Atet of the sun god Ra, and by the souls directed to the world of the dead. I will explore each of the 7 gates that terminate into 7 chapels dedicated to 7 gods, namely the deified Seti I, Ptah, Ra-Harakti, Amun-Ra, Osiris, Isis, and Horus. I will begin at gate 1 here, and proceed all the way to 7. Interestingly, only gate 5 opens up to further chambers, the Osiris Hall, and chapels dedicated to Isis, Osiris, and Horus. You can see 7 gates represented in the construction here at the Temple of Hathor in Dendera, and again at Qasr el-Saga in the Fayum Oasis, and also represented here as a false door in Karnak, the 7 gates, and next to it, the 7 keys of light. I believe the sacred number 7 could represent the 7 stages in the alchemical process, or perhaps the 7 chakras, or the 7 classical planets and their associated metals. But why is it that gate 5 is the only way to additional chambers? Given that there are various interpretations on the order of the alchemical stages and classical planet, metal, organ, and chakra associations, I believe that the chapel of gate 4, the largest and only gilded chapel, represents the sun, and the heart or solar plexus chakra, and gate 5 represents the throat. This is interesting because Schwaller de Lubicz, in his book, The Temple of Man, connects the Holy of Holies in the Temple of Luxor with the throat chakra. It's Horus and Osiris. All right, let's go.
All of these big columns, and as we get to the back end of the temple, there are 7 rooms. We keep seeing that number 7 everywhere we go. And these rooms are all decorated. Room number 5 is the one where you pass through to the tail end of the temple.
and the goose, and then the circle, the fruit, the dish with the honeybee, the wheat.
It doesn't look modified or revised at all.
So you need to like really climb up there, and I can see. So you see where the bird, like on the bottom right of the helicopter, there's that bird.
Yeah.
You can see that clearly there's two things slapped on top right there.
Right. I see that.
And you can also kind of see.
Here are the controversial, quote-unquote, helicopter hieroglyphics. The walls of the Temple of Seti I are keeping a log of the pharaonic history. Upon the death of Seti I, his son, King Ramses II, took over the completion of the temple, and he had his artists plaster over many of the cartouches of Seti I and updated it with his name as the governing king. This was a common practice during the time of King Ramses II. On a lintel in the first hypostyle hall, you can see the overlap of hieroglyphics, as some sections of the covering plaster has fallen away over time. Looking at this through a modern lens, these two layers of hieroglyphics create a helicopter and spaceship-like form. Helios and his consort, Shusha. This is the 6th gate. How's it feel to be back?
It's awesome. I'm excited for the Osireion.
Sixth gate.
unlike the god. So it's easy to know the difference between Seti and his son Hot. And by the way, Seti is considered to be the most expensive one in America. So they're sold like to be around some kind of like the temple guards that you see here, Abydos, the rest of the mission is lazy. She said that if the key will come with this, then on the place will come this. Look at the connection of Max and Isis. Most of them has the same dress. Because most of them has wings. So what you can see, it is the feathers of the wings.
Dude, what is that, like 100,000 lumens?
It's crazy. Yeah.
And then the king, he raised that jet belt.
Didn't see that.
Oh, so this is the base of it here. And you can see the base of the pillar going all the way up to this elaborate necklace type piece. And then these are the tiers. I've never seen a jed pillar that detailed before. And that's the end of the pillar, and then it starts with this piece here, and then it goes up. You can see the horizontal beams here, and at the top these horn type features. The highest point is broken off, so this is restoration. This piece up here is restoration. So I bet you there was a point that went all the way straight out of that. I think that's by far the most elaborate depiction.
The temple is supposed to end with one method, but here it is 7 ones. So the first room we just left, it was the father, Horus, and here you can see his mother, Isis. And the reliefs all over the 7 shrines shows us that the king will put the door outside and put the seal out, seal the doors, and then you will enter the place for the shrine of Isis. You will burn the incense or the perfume in front of it. And on the other side, you will start to change the clothes of the statue.
It's much
So
better.
these 2 long you see, they are the clothes. And then you will put this magic necklace to her neck. And then he do the same here as well. At that part of the room, he will start to put the new cloth on the statue. And as soon as you see the king raising his finger like that, so it is the perfume, the incense. He put the oil to her head. And then we can see the depiction of the false doors, which usually used for the souls. And then we can see the part or the pole of Isis. I'm sorry. So those nearly the same reliefs you're going to see it on each room. This is the name. Sorry.
I guess we got more ancient because they look like
Yes, they are. No, they are actually. And I don't know, the first time you see.
This is the 7th gate. It's much more deteriorated. Here we have the bark, the solar bark.
Will become sometimes among men, the fertility god. So you can see among Ra with 2 feathers, among men with 2 feathers, but with this major as well. He's the fertility god. Right.
There's something interesting about this depiction of the solar bar. So if you look up here, you can see that there is a metal box or something like that in the middle. But then this white piece is being held by this little guy right here. And it almost looks like a white piece of cloth. So whatever was being carried in this solar bark is being wrapped with a piece of cloth to sort of cover it. Because there's something, this white shape here looks like it's wrapped around and covering up whatever this is. And this little guy here, it's not a guy, it's probably like a clip or something that was holding that cloth. The same thing on the other side.
This is interesting, Jeff. It's kind of like I did there with the 2 on top of it, but there's no mound.
And then that's the lotus.
So do you know what is this? What is this supposed to mean?
Well, it's simple type, but it's a hard time.
Right.
With the name of the king. It's like first we met lotus as well.
Like closed lotus and then open lotus.
This is the 4th gate. The Golden Gate. was a good observation with the
Small differences. Yeah, it's just that was unusual. I was trying to figure out what that is.
Yeah. This is the third gate. This is the second gate. A lot of restoration here. And the first gate. Looks like a king's list.
Alright, so now we're going to pass through the gate into room number 3.
This is the chapel of Nefertim in Sokar.
You missed.
On the eastern and western walls, there are 5 cells. First gate. The second gate. The third gate.
La seconda cosa, Osiris child. And also reliquie we see that is Isis holding Osiris, which is protecting her. Mainly the male nethers, the female nethers, or even the queen is protecting the kids. This is not really and what is not yes, sorry. No. Isis protecting her husband, Osiris, holding him with the wings.
practices that involve various tinctures. Again, it's all alchemy. Get up.
And how is he putting something through the body?
It looks like he's either spraying something on that fire or stoking fire and blowing some smoke into the room. Either purifying those relics or some sort of, Richard and I were just saying that all of the ceremonies were ritual magic and alchemy where they believed that these incense smoke or the sacred rituals would cleanse or purify or bring the spirit of the gods into the relics and all this kind of stuff.
And the development of alchemy, and I'm not sure if this really goes back to ancient Egypt, but the development of alchemy was more than simply the production of gold. The idea was that by going through these rituals, you would gain power, and not only for this life, but in the afterlife. So it was a way to get that out. This is again why the pharaoh and the priests are at each other's throats.
So the big veil of the word alchemy is that it is practical chemistry enshrouded in the veil of human spiritual transformation. Right. So especially during the medieval period, doing science was very much prohibited. And if you were a scientist practicing practical chemistry, it would very quickly get you burned at the stake. So what they had to do was shroud this developing science of practical chemistry under the veil of spiritual alchemical transformation. They weren't actually talking about physical chemistry.
Let's do it.
Hey, Albert, can we come back through on the way out? Can we come back through here?
Some glyphs of jet pillars. Yeah, I was, Can we get some pictures before we leave?
Yes.
Yeah, this was Ramesses' desire to basically put a genealogy
On display, just so everybody did. Yep.
Here's the king's list, starting with 0 Dynasty, Menes, or also known as Nymer. This is the Abydos Kings list, and it was a part of a ritual in which the spirits of the ancestors were invoked. The names of the past kings and queens were not deemed worthy or excluded. It was important for the ruling king to emphasize that he or she was the legitimate descendant of a long line of rulers, and therefore the uncontestable legitimate king of Egypt. The cartouches of the kings are organized chronologically. The top register starts with Menes, or Narmer, on the left, and on the far right, Seti I. 18 Heracleopolitan kings and the first 4 kings of the 11th dynasty are not mentioned, as well as the heretical king Akhenaten.
Usually hunting has a mixed meaning. They are hunting the evil souls, the bad spirits.
I like how they draw this net and they
Yes.
put the net around and they pull it and it closes like that. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to part 2.
This image shows the Osireion's location in the temple complex. Its axis aligns with that of the temple and the enclosure wall pylon entrance. The entrance to the Osireion is via a tunnel from the north enclosure wall. This enters a large chamber on the main temple axis. A 90-degree turn to the east down a sloping passage leads to the main part of the Osireion. This plan by Edward Neville shows the Osireion is not orientated to the cardinal points, but for simplicity, authors have adapted local methods in relation to the Nile. As to the orientation of the complex, Petrie believed that it has a connection to the royal tombs of the earliest dynasties. In Felton's plan here, he provides a key to the type of stones used in the Osireion. The walls in Central Island are made of sandstone, and behind the walls, the structure is completed in limestone. The large pillars and their beams and the roofing stones are made of granite. Here are what remains of the Osireion, also called the cenotaph of Seti I. This impressive structure is a marvel of ancient Egyptian engineering and is a subterranean part of the temple complex built by Seti I. Water is being removed from the larger recess so that we may complete our objectives for the mission today. During Margaret Murray's 1902 excavations, she discovered a brick arch entrance under the northern enclosure wall and the two chambers at the southern end of the entrance corridor. She would also discover the start of the sloping passage. Due to her limited resources, this was as far as she could excavate. Major clearance would start in 1912 under Neville. A steam engine was utilized in the total clearance of the entrance corridor in 1925 by Frankfurt. As most of the passage was covered with more than 40 feet of wind-blown sand, its clearance was a vast expenditure and gamble.
The ritual of the death and resurrection of Osiris.
About 500 men, and 3.5 weeks later, the corridor was cleared. To his delight, the stone floor was intact, as were most of the walls, which were found to be covered in text. The west wall had the Book of the Gates, and on the east wall, the Book of what is in the underworld. Originally, the corridor and the chambers would have been roofed with stone beams, but they were robbed in antiquity. Thankfully, the Antiquities Department took advantage of this clearance and built a roof along its length to protect.
Okay. All right. The gate has officially been opened. Stone portion of the entrance corridor. I am very, very excited. It's not often that I get this pumped. I am very, very excited. It's not often that I get this pumped for on-site expeditions, but this is such a unique experience for me to be able to participate in this mission to investigate the source of the water underneath the temple. It's a big moment. You guys get to see it live on camera. And here, we've reached first chamber. And as I mentioned in my video, as we initially reach the
According to Margaret Murray, the small southern chamber was sculptured with the 168th chapter of the Book of the Dead. This chapter, we are told, is devoted to the worship of the gods of the 12 caverns, or the divisions of the night, by the king. The Great Hall was found to have various scenes on its north, west, and southern walls. The east had been quarried away in antiquity.
That this chamber does indeed have good acoustic properties. Hieroglyphic symbols, the meaning of which would be explained to the initiate prior to the death and resurrection ritual. And the ancillary chamber, as anticipated, I propose that this is an acoustic amplification chamber. And that hypothesis was prior to me ever stepping foot inside of this structure. But I'm sure you can hear it on the camera that this chamber does indeed have good acoustic properties. And here, we'll get our first look.
Okay, with Mr. Ham. Enjoy. Enjoy.
Man, I gotta reiterate how much of an honor this is for me to be able to be involved in this project. As I explained in my previous episodes on the Osireion, several wells were drilled in and around this area to analyze the water below these structures. They've also drilled a well within the Osireion, and they've been testing the properties of the water. And here we have the first transverse chamber. So this part of the structure would have originally had a roof. You can see the remains of the roof here. Finally get some recognition within the legitimate archaeological community. I mean, it's a huge honor and blessing. And I was added to this team because of my recent research. So I just had chills kind of going up my back. Because you can imagine the experience of the initiates crossing into the Temple of Osiris. And if this little bridge wasn't here, the only way to access the central island is by first being fully immersed in the primordial waters surrounding the central island. So if you were an initiate being introduced into the cult of Osiris, you had to be first fully immersed in the water. And this is an ancient ritual known as lustration, purification by water. And only those who had gone through the ritual purification could then enter the sacred central island. And of course, this is why I also believe that there are very special properties to this water. And the location for the Osireion was selected intentionally to tap into this subterranean water source, which they have now proven is independent from the Nile River. So this temple is literally sitting right on top of an isolated body of water. And they built this temple so that it would tap directly into this very unique source of water that still fills the temple. There's water flowing in through the recess from this area. So we brought an endoscope. And we're going to see the camera. We also brought our LiDAR scanning equipment. So kind of the big reveal for the equipment that we've been integrating into our research. We've seen some previews of the LiDAR scans that we've been obtaining from various artifacts and structures.
This is a 3D model of the Osireion by Keith Hamilton, and it gives us an idea of the layout. We just traveled the entrance corridor. We examined the inscriptions of the Great Hall. This is the southern chamber. We walked down the sloping passage, past the first transversal hall, and crossed the purifying waters of the moat. This is a cross-section model by Keith Hamilton. There have been experiments to determine the true depth of the Osireion Central Island. In 2004, in an archaeological mission headed by Westerman, a probe was descended to a depth of 8.4 meters, but it did not reach the solid foundation layer. Then, in 2007, Westerman directed a seismic survey to determine the depth of the central island of the Osireion. The result was about 15 meters below its surface. Studies of the Westerman mission also showed that there are cavities and voids inside the central island, which purposes are unknown. These seismic studies showed that the Osireion rests in a deeper pit than previously thought, and that during construction, the pit would have extended into the floor plan of the Seti temple to provide sufficient space for the work. For this reason, the foundation and lower levels of the Osireion must have been built before the Seti temple. 3 interesting conclusions derived from a 1992 geological survey concerning the water at the Osireion are: 1. The source of the groundwater within the Osireion is not directly due to the Nile itself, but to an aquifer of fossil water, which drains from the east side of the western desert towards the Nile Valley. 2. The level of water within the aquifer is unpredictable. 3. A particularly high Nile level can impose itself on top of the local aquifer, thus bringing into play a second variable in the potential height of the groundwater within the Osireion. The existence of a possible conduit that might be connected to the Osireion and passing under the Seti temple is yet to be proved and awaits further excavation. In 1992, the SETI I and Osireion Project attempted to test the existence of the conduit using ground-penetrating radar. However, the soil conditions they encountered made it impossible to detect anything below 2 or 3 meters in the area surveyed, which was well above the likely depth of the hypothesized conduit. It is thought that this conduit was designed to take water from the Osireion in order to maintain an even water level within the Osireion channel. This postulation fits well with the unpredictable water levels of the natural aquifer.
Absolutely amazing.
We are now standing on the island of the central hall. At the heart of the Osireion is the large recess where water is being removed for investigations. On the island of the central hall, we have 2 lines of 5 granite pillars. and between the spaces of the pillars, we have 6 cells on the north and south walls. On the east wall, we have 3 cells, and 2 cells on the west wall. There is a total of 17 cells. To learn the esoteric connection of this number, watch my husband's episode 118. In Westerman's 2012 expedition, he found a cylindrical drilling hole located in the northeastern part of the square pit in the floor of the central island, the smaller recess. There is a number of different hypotheses on the subject, but the exact purpose of this hole has not been determined yet. The direction of the axis of the hole is oriented to the true north.
يا أستاذ هاني يا أستاذ هاني تمام أنا اتكلمت معه.
There they are.
So I had anticipated that these were like inscribed on the stone, but it looks like they're just drawn on, like red ochre.
It looks like a pigment.
Yeah, pigment.
These are examples of what appear to be red ochre paint splatters. Let's take a closer look. What we have here is the work of a graffiti artist. Some have speculated that perhaps Pythagoras had made the pilgrimage and is responsible for this graffiti. This work was likely done when the interior of the Osireion was inundated with sand, so that the artist could reach these heights. There's actually multiple attempts at the flower of life symbol. Here we see 4 in this frame. I'm Lex Levy. Today I'm going to show you how to draw the flower of life using a compass.
Here was originally completely sealed. You can see the limestone blocks here.
Another anomalous construction feature of the Osireion is that the second transversal hall originally was closed off without entrance. In modern times, a breach was made in the east wall's middle cell, giving access into the hall. However, in antiquity, the transverse hall must have been accessible, as it is decorated with a wonderful scene of the sky goddess Nut stretched out over the world. Within the Temple of Seti I, we find a room also without an entrance. It is called the Blind Room, and it features 2 pillars. There are some clues pointing to its use as a cistern. This image shows the orientation of the eastern transversal hall, the tunnel in its eastern wall that leads towards the main temple of Seti I, and the Blind Room. I believe these structures are connected, and it warrants a follow-up investigation. Here's a photo of us exploring in the eastern transverse hall. Geoffrey is pointing to the tunnel in the eastern wall. Let's have a closer look at this tunnel. believed to be connected to the blind room within the Temple of Seti I.
Access this transverse chamber on the back side. This is a passage that was opened up that is believed to connect to the above ground portion of the Seti I temple. So this may be the back access into this isolated chamber within the Osireion. And we just finished and that certainly looks like it's just filled with rubble and debris back there that could be cleared out. Yeah, and then this area here, the brick, it's also patched. Certainly indicative of that there may be a passage leading into this back transverse chamber. You see that there are hieroglyphic inscriptions on the ceiling of this chamber. Here we have the goddess Nut. The celestial realm. That is believed that this goes back to the Seti I temple. So it goes back above ground and connects into the temple. So there may be a passageway because this area of the Osireion is not accessible from the main central island. They broke through. All right, so in my previous episode on the Osireion, I proposed that these 17 cells are emblematic of the death and resurrection of Osiris occurring on the 17th day of the month. It does not appear that there were any original decorations inside of these chambers, and that they were intended to be undecorated. And you can see from this configuration here that these cells are not intended to be accessible. So these planks of wood are how you get over the water from the central island into the cells. But there's no way to get from the island to the cell, and this blocks off the access to this ledge that I'm standing on. So these cells were also intended to be an inaccessible part of the structure. So if it wasn't for all that algae and stuff down in there, this water would be super clear. I mean, you can see how crystal clear the water is, but all that green color is from all the algae and
But by the sun, it used to have a
bacteria
roof.
and all that other stuff in here. But it would have originally been very pristine source of water in here, very similar to what we saw in the Osiris shaft, where that water is crystal clear, very, very clean. And it's just, you know, centuries of accumulation of algae and debris and growth in here that gives it the greenish color. Not to mention all the debris that's down in there. Careful, babe. I was rounding one of those corners. I was like, I can just see myself falling into the muck. Going around these corners is, again, you can see that from here, the central entrance, there's no way to access this ledge. This whole piece is blocking the access to the cells.
And now I'm going to take some LiDAR measurements. It's made of sandstone on the roof, and the remaining portion is limestone. Probing a few areas of interest with the endoscope, and Geoffrey found some extremely interesting results. And you can see housings and tubular drill here. It appears that these once had a door or doors. Like some hornet's nest here. I saw some huge ones flying around earlier. Some quarry marks. And these pillars, trilithons, are made out of red granite. The rest, the interior is sandstone, and it's cased in limestone. Home for some birdies. Huge megalithic pieces of red granite. The structure once was roofed with colossal pieces, little pieces of red granite. It is now exposed to the sun, and that is why there's so much algae growth and debris. This is a reconstruction of the Osireion by David O'Connor. Here, the top of the Osireion is depicted as an earthen mound. You can see a lot of soul deposits.
Hey, babe.
Yeah?
You got 5 minutes.
One thing I want to point out, it does appear that there was a door or a closure here of some sort. That these cells may have been opened and then closed. Definitely seems to be some acoustic properties inside of these.
Who would have thought that at 10 meters underground, there would appear a structure such as this, surpassing in grandeur the most colossal Cyclopean edifice? What a strange country this Egypt is. We were beginning to believe that we had found all the great structures and that nothing more remained to be discovered. Who can say that this region does not conceal beneath the ground some majestic work of the most ancient Egyptians that may bring surprises as astonishing as those of Abydos? Edward Neville, 1914.
Okay, so Richard specifically, and for those of you that aren't familiar, you don't know what we're doing, right? Good. Okay, awesome.
And can we go in through the main entrance?
Yes, we will.
Original entrance?
We will.
Okay. So now this structure.
شكرا.
Hello. ماشي انتوا انزلوا هنا سيبوني انا حددت
So this structure is called the Osireion. And you can immediately tell, just looking down into this thing, that it is a bit different than what we were just walking through. If you come over this way, you can get a better view of everything that we're going to be seeing outside of the room. Okay, so everything on the inside of the temple was all sandstone. These huge pieces are all red granite. There is some limestone and some sandstone incorporated in the construction, but all of the main pillars and all of the beams across are all huge pieces of red. Remember, this structure originally had a roof, and this entire thing was buried underground. They cleared all the water out of there, and it doesn't refill. This dry square right here. The other one, it will always fill back up. And the water is actually a bit higher now than it was the last time that we were down here. A little bit.
Yes, none of it. I think the rate was like, what, 10,000 gallons?
Oh yeah, when they were originally doing the first excavation, priest guide, most likely blindfolded, or otherwise completely in the dark. Going down into this completely dark subterranean passage, and you're just going further and further underground. So a lot of these ancient rituals were intended to remove all of your senses. You were supposed to be in the dark.
You're in the land of the dead.
Well, it also increases sensitization. Right?
In the land of the dead.
So these hieroglyphs
Are modern, maybe.
I'm not convinced that this section is contemporary to the structure itself.
Right. But maybe still when they were using it as some sort of initiation.
But I will show you there are some areas that are original, that do have hieroglyphs.
But not in granite, or yes in granite.
Yes, in granite, but these are just painted on. So if you close your eyes and you're just walking further and further and you know you're going down, you can feel the decline slope of the passageway. This route here is all modern restoration. Basically what you can see on both sides is modern restoration of this passageway. So now we get down here to the first chamber. You see some hieroglyphs that I think could be contemporary to the structure. This chamber here, the niches, all of the cells around the structure also have really, really good acoustic properties. Again, not super convinced that these are contemporary to the red granite part of the structure, but it is still all hieroglyphs referring to the death and resurrection ritual of Osiris. So in here you can see that the hieroglyphs have been carved in either later editions or remodeling to the structure. And now we get into the real bones of the structure, where you start to see absolutely massive pieces of stone.
And even grass growing up out of them too.
Yeah, no, I mean there's subterranean water all below this thing. So anything that has a good root can get down to water. These pieces are sandstone, but then we transition over here into granite. Okay, so again, as we were saying, you come down the processional entryway. Everything is in the dark. You're led by your conductor here, and he just helps you right into the water. Because you cannot access that central, and I said that if you ran and jumped, you could get there. Nah, you ain't making it. Yeah, unless you're an Olympic long jumper. It doesn't matter how fast you're running, you're not jumping onto the central island. So the only way to get to that staircase is to
take the plunge.
Take a little swim. How deep is the water? So they have excavated down. They put a drill down, and I believe it was 30 meters that they went down.
So that's
30 meters.
No, but
no, it's filled with mud now, but the water goes way down.
And it does look like it's circular.
Way down. So there is some movement, and you can see here, this is one of the data loggers. This pipe here is one of the drill cores that they drill down into the mud. It does not, they have never hit solid rock. The deepest they could go was they ran out of drill bits. And I believe it was 30 meters. So here you can see that there's a stairway leading up out of the water onto the central island. So these are all single pieces of red granite. All of these pieces are, I mean, absolutely immense pieces of red granite. I would struggle to say that even anywhere on the Giza Plateau you see granite pieces this size. Close, but this is something incredibly special that they did down here. So you have to remember, in the excavation of this thing, you first had to excavate the pit and know that you were intentionally tapping into a source of water below the structure. Okay, so that's civil engineering challenge number one, is if this thing is constantly filled with water, how are you building the foundation?
Do you smell gas?
It's just the smell coming out of here.
It smells like eggs.
Yeah. There are sulfur compounds in the water. We have chemical analysis. So this is the ongoing investigation. So they have chemical analysis data. They have water fluctuation data. All that is indicating that the source of water below the structure is completely independent.
Right. So, but it's different from the brackish water.
It does have salt content.
Okay.
Yes.
So that's maybe why they first initially assumed it may have been the Nile, and then they...
So over in this corner over here is one of the holes that we've been investigating. You can't see it now because every time that they clear this water out, more comes in through the hole.
And it's over, the hole's over here?
Correct. And we also know that the water in this pit is not connected to the water around.
Really?
It doesn't come from... So this is another mystery of the hydrodynamics that are going on in this structure. So the next thing we'll look at over here, everybody... Okay, so Billy Carson, again, is absolutely full of shit. He is the biggest liar in the entire alternative ancient history community. And I heard him say verbatim that the flower of life in the Osireion is molecularly engraved with a laser into the stone. That is a verbatim quote. He said molecular engraving.
What does that even mean?
It doesn't mean anything, because if you look up here, it's drawn on in paint.
Yeah, what is this?
This is the flower of life in the Osireion, and it is drawn on with red ochre paint. It is graffiti.
Right, just like this stuff.
What? I didn't notice that they were on both sides. Yeah, but they are on both sides.
I've only seen usually one of them.
Yeah, in no way is this original to the structure.
Yeah, no.
Very interesting speculation about what was going on with the
Wow,
nostril.
look at the red granite ceiling.
There you go.
Yeah, I can smell it.
So they've also proposed that this was possibly light, that there was a fire burning here.
Oh, that'd be fucking sweet.
So nobody knows. Very astute observation. So within the, I don't know if you're actually familiar with my work, but I talk about subterranean methane deposits. That's also been suggested in the group that possibly methane was coming out of here. And you could light the methane and you would have a burning blue flame inside of the structure, which would be pretty cool. Sure, okay, you don't want to be breathing that in for a long period of time. This is Dr. Ahmed Aziz. He's my colleague, I guess, but one of the leads between, so James Westerman, Jim Westerman, was one of the first to really start digging into the mysteries of the Osireion and investigating the source of the groundwater. Dr. Ahmed Aziz is from the Sohag University, and he's the archaeological scientific lead of the structure. And we were down here, as you guys were looking into these holes, and generally speaking, the objective of the mission is A, to try to determine the source of the water in the Osireion, and for conservation purposes, preservation. Something is pushing water into there from the hole on that side. Yep. So now we can walk down in here real quick, and I'm going to show you the transverse chamber. And the unusual thing about the transverse chamber is that this area of the structure was inaccessible while it was in operation. They had to break through. There was a door here, and this area was closed. Yeah. Yeah, they're very precisely executed and articulated. Okay, so this is kind of where the mystery lies, is up in this hole. And one area has been bricked off, and then there's another passage up here that has never been, well, officially has never been completely excavated.
And this is kind of salt on the walls is kind of similar to the Queen's Chamber tunnel.
Yeah, so there was water in here originally. You can see the water level in the corner. So there was a bunch of water in here, and it evaporated up, and it caused the salination of the walls.
So you're gonna climb into your jump and check it out?
So it's a dead end. It doesn't well. I think this is the one. Now,
Why they close?
so this is proposed to connect into an area of the Seti I temple above ground known as the blind room. And the blind room is also inaccessible from inside of the Seti temple. So the blind room is literally a square room that has no doors. So we don't know exactly how the blind room was accessed, but it is believed that the blind room connects down here into this chamber. Again, this isn't a burial chamber. There was no burials or anything like that ever found down in here. So they don't know exactly what this chamber was for or how it was used in the context of this initiatory ritual. But there had to be a way to get in and out of this thing.
Yeah.
And just because we don't know how it works now, doesn't mean that they didn't have a way.
Yeah, but I mean, the level of the thickness of the rock here
Yes.
would indicate that they didn't have a way to get through this area.
Sure.
This was.
How they know?
I mean, I wasn't how thick.
Oh, so they came in here.
It was like 3 feet.
Oh, yeah, yeah, and it would completely gone all the way to this side. So it was a
So
single
how they
chamber.
know?
So because of the door here, right, the door leading into this niche, there may have been a crack or something of that nature that gave them the indication, hey, let's knock through this and see. They also may have somehow found their way down in here through the above ground portion, known that this was here, and then excavated out this way. So that's another mystery of the Osireion, is how this thing is connected into the above ground structure. Again, how do they know to carve through this thing?
Was broken when in the 90s?
No, so this was actually done by,
I mean, the ceiling was.
oh yeah, it was already collapsed and most of it was gone. Yeah. And there's a lot of rubble that is kind of moved through the entrance area that had already fallen down, but they used to take stones away and use them for other construction. So a lot of that stone was repurposed. So you guys are pretty lucky that you're actually going to see, not that anything's going to go on that's going to blow your mind, but it does look like they're setting up. So what they're going to do is start pumping out that water so that we can continue investigating that little hole. I will say,
Support evidence.
yeah, exactly. And this is kind of the general statement that I've heard from all of the Egyptologists that I've worked with in my time in Egypt, is that they acknowledge the dynastic period, but they also know that that was just a secondary marker in the timeline of Egypt, that it goes up. But please be careful.
Don't jump in the water. You will
Looks
not purify
refreshing.
yourself.
Right.
It will not purify.
Modify yourself.
In some way.
So again, as we were talking about the function of the structure, come on. There's no way to get from the central island to the cells either. So in my opinion, in the preparation for the ritual, they probably had some wooden planks set up to where the participants in this ritual could get set up in here. And then they would remove the wooden planks. The people would already be in here. And you'll see that there are hinges here. So these were closed recesses that could only be opened from the inside.
I'm here at the Osireion in the first transverse hall, and I'm going to show you one of the in situ ceiling pieces. You can just make out faint pigment that remains. And these are all pieces of the red granite ceiling that have caved in. Oh, you can just make out remaining hieroglyphs.
Yes, no.
For sale, yeah? For that? The house.
I'm Lex Levy. Today we're here at the Osireion. I'm Lex Levy. Today we're here at the Osireion, and I'm standing in the northern entrance, which would have been where the initiates would first enter into the subterranean Osireion. It's a basin.
Room is known as the Hall of the Bars, or the Hall of the Bars. And you can see something very different about this chamber compared to all the rest of them. There are work spaces, desk height, counters, where there appears to be some fixtures that were placed down inside of these.
That's true. I've never seen those in the other ones.
This is a very, very rare feature of these temple sites, is having a physical space where some sort of work is being performed. Because these are very clearly desk height. And they're made for people to be here doing something. Of course, I like the idea that this is a laboratory of sorts. And you can see here on all of the walls, there are a number of different jars and vessels, as with most hieroglyphic depictions, but specifically here, there's different jars and containers. And again, these elaborate magic rituals that are being depicted in these hieroglyphs. This is the room that was the particular favorite of Geoffrey Seti. She got a lot of her inspiration and visions from inside of this room.
She used to sleep on her head on that rock and down that rock. That's why they put the rock here.
So there very well may have been something. So you can see we have big rectangular blocks, but then there's this small rectangle here.
She used to sleep. So,
who knows what was originally here in this area of the temple? Clearly, they've removed some stone.
And they allow
So she was like a keeper of the temple. So these guys with the archaeas outside, she was one of those. So she basically lived in the temple and maintained the site. So she lived here.
Here we have mufka, the cornbread. Here we have Temple of Crosses.
It doesn't work. Yeah, you have to have the right connection. Yeah. So here, we've been pointing out these kind of Templar type crosses, very early Christian additions to the structure, where they came in here and painted over things that were already here. So those aren't original to the structure.
This concludes our expedition to the Temple of Seti I and the Osireion. If you want to help support our research and expeditions, grab some merch from the new Archaeo.alchemy store. Rock the classic logo in your favorite color combination with some beautiful alchemical prints. There are hats, mugs, hoodies, shorts, tanks, and tapestries. More designs are in the works, so stay tuned. And if you want to be the lifeblood of my channel, please become a member for early access, exclusive updates, and content. Thank you all so much. Now, back to our adventure.